All right, this is the inaugural rendition of Dee's practice pod. Today I have Mr. Frank Bellucci with me.
Thank
Is
you.
it Bellucci or Bellucci?
Bellucci.
Bellucci. CCI or SHI?
CCI.
CCI.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Bellucci. Yeah, see,
Okay.
everybody spells it wrong. I can tell them 15 times. Two C's, and they'll still put either one C or one
There's
L.
there's a good reason for that. There's some pretty famous people with the other name, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Not as famous as me, but yeah. No.
Not in our circles, right?
There you go.
Okay. Okay. I first saw you when I was a kid at a clinic that the Long Island Drum Center was holding, and you showed us an exercise for hi-hat, wherein you were playing 16th notes on the hi-hat, and you were opening it in the four possible places that you can open it, right? And actually, I have something to show you later. I have something on. I've written a bunch of books,
I know. Yeah.
you know,
I
and
have one of them. You gave me at the drum center.
oh, okay, cool, right. Well, the latest one that I'm still writing is called Young Frankendrummer, and it's one of the pages is dedicated to you and the measure exercise, and basically I just expounded on it. So I'd like
That's great.
like you to see that.
Yeah.
But you're a left-handed drummer,
Yeah.
and you play on a left-handed kit.
Yes.
If you'll notice here, our student kit is set up to hopefully accommodate both left and right-handed people.
Hi-hats, oh,
Because
yeah,
I
great.
started playing left-handed when I started playing, and I always thought it unfair that everything was all set up for right-handed
Right.
guys, you know. So tried to cut plus, you know, let's just say you had it the regular way and you're going to play on traditional drums and you want to play left-handed. 5 minutes takes to maybe flip it around, then 5 minutes to, you know, put it the other way. Well, that's 10 minutes now. Now, whose time is that? Is that your time? Is it my time? Is it the other student's time?
Very true.
You know?
This is great.
So, hopefully, you know. So, I get asked a lot of questions by students about being a professional, and I am a professional, but I haven't played with the people with the kind of notoriety that you have. Could you tell us, just do a little name dropping for me?
Well, I've been lucky, but I'll just start with this weekend because it's right on my mind. You know, I
Right.
just played with Dean Brown, who's just a monster guitar player. You know, he's on Billy Cobham records. He's on a million things. He's on tour with Billy Cobham now, actually as we speak. You know, with Steve Smith, and the bass player was Skylar Deal, who goes back with Billy Joel and Michael Bolton, and another one that's on all these recordings. And the band was just smoking, and it was original stuff. So it was it was a test for me because we tried to get together Friday, but Dean was coming in from Boston after his show with Billy, and by the time he got we rehearsed in Baldwin at Skylar's house. By the time he got there, I was there. I had to go to Long Beach and start the Jazz Fest that day. So by the time we all settled down, the horn players show up. We didn't even get through probably half of it, because we're not talking just. I mean, some was just some basic, maybe a blues, basic arrangements, but some of them were intense. And playing drums with this, and especially the guys that they're used to playing with, it was. I have to admit, it was tough, But thank God that we read,
Right.
which is so important.
Oh, yeah.
That every student should
Yeah.
know. Because although he sent me tracks beforehand with charts, it's you get these charts, and a lot of times the tracks they're sending you are from maybe live recordings, which are not
Different arrangement.
different arrangements.
Mhm.
You have charts that have been handwritten over and over again to where it becomes diluted.
It's just mud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do this, one time they probably cut a section out, and then this time they're going back to the section, but you see in X's and all the. So listening to it until you play, as you have to play and get the feel for everyone. That's the key.
Absolutely. Would you consider yourself? Would you consider your playing above your reading?
I would imagine so, because that's the first thing that comes, I think, for all of us. I
Yeah.
don't know anybody that says, oh, I want to play drums because I want to read.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so
We're very different that way. You know, a lot of instruments like piano, it's almost one in the same because it just has to be.
yeah, wait,
You know?
right. It's something that
Yeah.
I mean, but still, you know, everybody, you know, when we're kids or whenever we get that feeling, or you know, where you realize that this is something I want to do. I mean, we all start. It's like saying, you know, hey mom, I want a guitar. You know,
Yeah.
I want a piano.
Right.
So a lot of times it becomes where you just get the instrument before the lessons and the reading.
Absolutely.
And then you
yeah.
realize that, okay, if I want to take
Right.
it further, drums, unfortunately, well, fortunately, I guess, and unfortunately, is one instrument where everybody feels they can play. You know,
Yeah,
so
right,
and that's why
yeah.
it becomes, and you know, not to get off the subject here, but I learned to read later on in life. I was already playing, you know, 5 years old. My father was taking me to
Right.
his restaurant and
Right.
bar that he owned, and
Right.
just playing, you know, as a kid, and then later on, 10, 11 years old, I was doing some parties with, you know, with an accordion player.
Right.
Just play.
Yeah.
Now I didn't know anything about a rudiment.
Oh, I was the same way. I was a better. I'm always going to be a better player than a reader
It's, you know,
because
and
I started later myself.
right. I did, and then I was probably, I would say, maybe 18 when I started buckling down, because I loved the big band stuff, and I said,
Right.
in order to do that, you have to read. You're
Right.
not getting the chance to, you know, listen to the music beforehand. You have to read those kicks. So
Right.
I really buckled down, and I still, you know the deal. I do all these gigs, but a lot of them are not tough reading things. They're
Right.
basically a basic form. If I do the jazz gigs, here's just the form of the tune, a few kicks. If you're doing real book tunes, you know, so it's nothing
Right.
really.
I guess it depends on who your conductor is, really.
Yes, and
you
like
know?
this weekend was okay. This stuff was written out.
Right.
You know, this stuff. This is the
Verbatim.
line.
Yeah. Right.
So you know, and it's especially when you're playing the drums. You know, you think about all these things. You always, you know, I know for me, I never could find a comfortable spot for the music stand. Number one, we basically put it over our hi hat. But
Right.
now you know, now you have your whole drum set the other way.
Oh yeah.
Now, depending, because I'm lefty, a lot of times people don't realize. So when we set up, the conductor or leader is on the opposite side of me.
Right.
Because they always they're so used to the drummer
Sure.
having the
Right.
hi hat on the one
Of
side,
course.
you know,
Right.
left side, as opposed to me on the right.
Right. Right.
So here I am facing a wall, no less.
Oh my God.
You're not looking
Yeah.
at your drums. You're looking at the drum. You're trying to turn to look at whoever's conducting. So it's a lot to do. So you don't want, you want to at least be comfortable with reading.
Right.
That's what I tell my students, because now if you're not comfortable with reading, now it's hard enough you're leading the band. Now you're trying to look at the conductor. You're trying to look at your drums, you know, when you're playing. So you have so much going on now that it's very hard to focus on the most important thing, the music.
Right. Who did you turn to when you decided you needed to learn to read?
Al Miller was the guy, you know, and I'm still buddies with, as we said, I'm still real tight with Matt. I just spoke
Yep.
to him yesterday, so who's a, you know, monster. Al Miller was the guy. You know, I used to go to the drum center at times and just to get equipment and stuff, you know, and I'd be going to gigs.
Right.
And even then, you know, I always this weekend I did, like, I played with about 6 different groups at the Jazz Fest that Steve Adelson ran, and you know, I'm blessed enough that he invites me every year, and this year I got to play with so many different groups, and so it's the one thing that, you know, they all goofed around, like even the crowd there, and go, oh, here you are again, you're playing with again. The best compliment, we all like compliments, you know, and
Right.
you have to know where it's coming from.
Sure.
But, you know, the best thing that I heard was the hardest working man in show business. So I said, you know what, I'll take that, because to hear great or the best, there's no such thing as that, you know,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
It's what your taste is, and you know, I always say there are musicians in other countries that will never see the light of day that will stay
They're tremendous. Yeah.
right?
Well, some of these guys coming out of Europe now, like the Marco Minimans and
Yeah,
guys like that,
right.
it's like a completely different instrument than what I'm playing.
It's just, it's going further and further.
Right.
But the thing of, when I heard that, and even Dean at one point, and here's a guy that's all over the world, goes, man, you're like the hardest working guy around. That I'll take. That you know, if not for anything else, I like my kids to know that. That at least, you know, regardless of what, it's not fame, it's definitely not fortune, that's for sure. But it's what I do for a living, I try to be, you know.
And it's
so-
nice to see somebody recognize that.
Exactly the point, you know.
absolutely.
And I know I'm all over the place here, but the
No, it's-
reading thing was Al Miller,
Right.
and that's what I have to say when I was really on the game, as you know, when you went, because
Right.
I used to go, I think it was only 45 minutes to his house in Plainview,
Right.
and he already knew I could play the drums, so we never touched the drum set with him. I
He-
never did.
We had that same deal.
Same thing, right?
Yeah.
He knew you could play. He knew already my hands were there because I had, you know, already done the stuff with Jim and Chapin but, so I said, Al, stuff I never did, which was the snare drum reading, the orchestral stuff I never did, the rudimental stuff I never did.
That guy could read anything.
Forget
If
about
if
it,
you
know?
took like black ink and threw it
Yeah.
from across the room,
Yeah,
he'd tell
exactly.
you what that was.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
And the sweetest man, and you know, like I said, here are his two sons. We had the 4 kids, but his 2 sons, I would be going there, and I'm sure you know, I'd be
Yes.
hearing Matt upstairs practicing the Chicoria records, and I'm like, who's that?
Right.
You know? So, Al was, and I would go, and I'm sure you did too, with literally just a pile of books in a bag.
No less than 14.
You know, right?
Yeah.
And just say, Al, I want to hit every one. And I knew when I went there for the lesson that I would have what he gave me and the page after, because when you went to him, you never went back to any of the page. He
Right.
put the new page up, and let's go. So I always said I want to be prepared and not make a fool of myself, so I would do my lessons and then get the page after down. And he would say, if you have no questions, we keep going. And then I would just write out, okay, how does this go?
Right.
Because when I went through that, it was the Cerrone book, kicked my butt, and that Albright book, which I look back now,
Oh my God. Yeah.
I can't even go through half that stuff that I have to. It's like,
And I got all his notes in there.
Right,
And you know what? I would love to be able to pick his brain on some of those things now. And
very true, man.
You know?
It's just wild that I look at it now and go, I did this? You know? So now and then if I have a student thing on, because I'm like, I'm going through with my student, I'm telling them, I'm
right.
like, man, I did all this. Look at the dates on my book, you know?
That's Most of what I have that I'll put on screen is all my books that I worked on with him. So you see his writing with the date next to it.
Yeah,
It's
isn't that great?
83.
I know.
How old are you?
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, you're young still, yeah. But like I said, I did that as far as for me later in life, because I never, you know, I went on the road when I was 18. I didn't go to
Wow.
school, college, which brings me to another point where I guess for me it was the best thing. I mean, does a part of me wish that I went to maybe, you know, Berkeley, or did I go on to, you know, like all my buddies went on to you know, study music, but I went on the road. So now I see a lot of my friends. That
That's
went
its own college.
That's it. There was no better way, you know, and maybe that's why I think about why I work, because I didn't have the educational, let's say, side of it, but I knew how to work with a band, any style, how to work with leaders, and that I learned the hard way being on the road.
Right. Well, you know, it's funny. We've followed a lot of the same pathways here. I was set up to go to SUNY Old Westbury. Went the first day. Realized that what they were going to teach me, I took the hardest percussion course they had, percussion 1 through 4, and I realized everything they were going to teach me that semester, I'd learned with Al Miller 2 years beforehand. And I'm like, but I also had some conscience going here, because we had a family business. And so I just kept on seeing my dad alone on a truck as I'm, all right, do I want to learn how to learn piano, violin, all of these things while my dad's busting his hump? Or I figured I was going to be a rock star anyway, right? You know, what do I need? You know, so I've had that same conundrum, you know, that same question in my mind. Should I have gone to school for this? Or, you know, as far as drums go, I don't think it makes a difference. And I think we're unique in that, you know,
Yeah.
because there's so many private guys, you can learn way more than you'll learn in school, you know. But if you want a piece of paper that says that you'll have tenure, that you'll have insurance, that you'll have this, you'll have that,
Right.
then sure, it's the way to go. So yeah, I'm 47. I still weigh that. You know.
And to tell your kids, I have two kids, to say, well, you're going off to school, well, you didn't go, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't go, but they see what I do for a living. So it's almost like, you know what, it was like a path that I don't know if I chose, or
Right.
some higher,
Right.
force,
Right.
whatever you wanna call it.
Sometimes things work out the way they're supposed
It
to.
just, chose me, and I say, would it have made me, it may be different, but what, you can't judge different, that better or worse. It might have been different, but one thing I always did, when I came off the road, I went for all lessons. I searched out every top guy. So Billy Cobham, I picked him up at the airport, and then I took him to his mother's house in Jamaica, Queens. So I picked his brain for hours. Not only did I take a lesson with him, but I got more out of being in the car with him. Steve Smith, like Rod Morgenstein, who's my buddy. We did a duo drum thing last year.
Another left-handed guy.
Left hand.
Another time I saw you at a clinic with him while the Dixie Dregs were touring with Rush,
Oh yeah.
and the other drummer there was Joe Franco.
Holy, that was in Queens, man.
That was above the fire department.
That's
Whatever.
right.
Yeah, it was a
Holy
long time
moly.
ago. Yeah.
I like that's right, and it was funny because we were goofing on Joe saying now there's two lefty kids. You never see that.
Right.
But that was, yeah, man. And Joey Franco's still a great friend. But I always, when even when Tommy Aldrich came, I searched out everybody just to pick their brain, and because maybe they weren't so much the teacher quote, kind of.
But you at least
person.
want to know what makes them tick,
Yeah,
because
Tommy
they've got
Aldrich
something that
is-
people are
What are they right, exactly?
gravitated towards.
And Aldridge was great because he talked about the business, how he got screwed with certain signing contracts and thinking you could move on to another band and you couldn't because you was. And he said I had to not work for like months or 6 months or whatever he
Wow.
said, just because of something where now you're not allowed to go to another band. So
Now,
you know-
was that just a contractual thing with a band? Was it a union thing?
you know what? I don't know if it was something that we was with at the time, that he was still under this contract. So now I'm sure if they would have said, all right, it's cool, go on.
Right.
But I guess it was something where somebody's breaking somebody's chops there.
Right.
And say, oh, now you're not with us, but you know what? Legally, you can't go out for another.
Yeah.
So and then I went to real like Dave Garibaldi. He had his stuff together. He came with the sheets. I just drew blank. The great drum teacher from Berkeley. He's no longer there. That Vinny went to all the drummers went to Steve Smith.
Well, I know
Oh, Gary. Oh man.
Chafee.
Yeah, Gary Chafee.
Okay.
What's wrong with me? So when I went for him, I was shaking.
Yeah.
And I took maybe.
Well, Rod is there now, isn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rod's, that's
Okay.
right. But Chafee was one where when I went in, I was nervous because there was no bull crap. Other guys like Billy Conway was like kind of hanging and talking. I did a lesson with Dennis Chambers that we soloed for an hour for the lesson. I wish I could find it because I brought a cassette. I said this would be a classic if I could find this. I went all
Yeah.
the way to Nyack to take a lesson. So my point again is, and this is for the students, you learn from everyone. So in the time I was going to, search out what made these people where they are, how did they get where they are now?
Right.
And sometimes it's not, a lot of times it's not a paradiddle or this book or this. It's,
Right.
Ron Morgenstein's the best. He says, Frank, if I wasn't at the same school at the same time,
Right.
with the Dregs,
Right.
it was, that's how it became. It just created like that. He goes, who knows why that happens,
Sure.
But you know what it is. You want to be prepared. So if it takes you to be reading, you should be prepared. Whatever it is, you have to have your chops up. You have to have. And the thing I like to say to my students is, be a chameleon. There's a lot of, as you know, drummers that could do that, and now there's speed demons. I have students that come
the
and
whole-
scare me.
yeah.
Double pedal, but you have to know how. I always relate it to toolbox. So you want to have your toolbox filled. That when
Right.
you walk into a gig, a job, you know that okay, this will take this tool and this tool. Not when you walk in, maybe you have two tools that are great, that work, but now the job you go to, you can't use those. So what do? You have to be able to dig deep at times and know how to, first of all, go to the gig, be on time, you know the story, get along with people, which sometimes is not the easiest thing.
Musicians are
Forget
very
about it.
fickle.
Sometimes, yeah,
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing for you.
Right.
But it's be a chameleon to go. You got to play brushes on this gig. You can only use a snare, a hi hat, and a little bass drum. Do that. You go to another gig and you can use this double bass. Great. You go to another gig, you have to, adjust. Maybe it's reading,
Right.
maybe it's the
Right.
volume so low, but you still have to keep the. It's so many things that if you want to work, you
Yeah.
have to adjust to the
Right.
situation.
It's funny. When I was teaching at the Long Island Drum Center, one time I'm hearing an argument between these two guys, and it goes on for a long time because I finished the student, and these guys are still talking. They were trying to decide who the better drummer was. Was it Buddy Rich or Steve Gadd? Okay, monsters. Okay, right. And one guy comes in sort of after the fact and just kind of kills the whole argument because they have their reasons or whatever, but the guy goes, here's the question I have. If Buddy was sick, could Gadd do his gig? Sure. Okay. If Gadd was sick, could Buddy do his gig? Kind of depends on what the gig was, right?
Exactly.
As Buddy Rich, for the students that don't know, is arguably the best big band drummer of all time. Certainly the most well-known. He's the name that gets dropped by non-drummers.
Yeah, right.
So
Exactly.
him and Gene Krupa, but yeah, it is be a chameleon. Absolutely.
And those are the ones I always looked up to. Like one of my, and he's a buddy of mine, which is, sometimes when I'm hanging with him, I'm like, I can't believe it's Vinny Colaiuta. It's like,
Yeah.
And I tell him too, I laugh, because one minute we're laughing and stuff, and then I'm going, wait a minute, it's like being around, whatever, Chick Corea, or, to me, John Coltrane, whatever, name it,
Right. Yeah.
Herbie Hancock, you see, it'd be like, those are your buddies, and I look at Vinny, who's a genius.
Just to be able to do, like, let's say the Faith Hill song "Cry."
There you go.
How simple was it just to move that one snare drum? And his thing, especially with the odd time stuff, he likes to play every other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now he made it even because it's a two-measure phrase.
Yeah, right.
So he can play with that a lot. Well, he was with Zappa.
There you go. Now you talk about, here I am, worried about what I had a sight read this weekend. Think about when he went in for an audition, and everybody tells the story. Bozio from,
Oh, yeah.
He went in, and it was like Zappa couldn't throw enough at him. Couldn't throw anything harder at this guy to read.
Songs like "Keep It Greasy," where there's a section in there where it's in like 1916 time, and then for one measure it's 2116 time, then it goes back to 1960. Oh my gosh!
That's why. So I look at someone like him that does that. Then he goes, plays with Sting. He just got off tour. Plays with Herbie. Does pop records. He's on. Who happened to a few months back? I play in Huntington. And Michael Bublé was there because he was filming a movie. His wife was filming a movie or something.
Okay.
So I said, you got to get him to come up. So the manager's like, well, I'll ask him and stuff. He's downstairs with his own little party there, whatever. I go, just tell him that the drummer upstairs is friends with Vinny Colaiuta. So he goes, what's his name? I go, Vinny Colaiuta. I write it down. Goes downstairs. He goes, man, the band would love to meet you. If you could just go say hi. He goes, the drummer upstairs is friends with Vinny. He goes, as I'm saying his name, trying to say it, Bublé's like, Colaiuta? Man, that's my man. Because Vinny played with him, and
Right.
he's on that
Well,
song.
who hasn't he
Just-
played with? You
I
just
know.
look at his site and you look at his discography.
It's insane.
He's done more this year than most people are doing their whole careers, and this hasn't even been like that busy of a year for him.
I'll give you one better. And my friend Billy Heller, great piano player, I played with last night. We went to see Vinny in the city. And, I get him in the car to drop him off at the hotel. Billy's behind her. So just for the heck of it, I put on a CD. And it's him. And Vinny's listening and he's going, man, that ain't bad. Who's this? Billy in the back seat fell on the floor, And Vinny, oh, that's you. Holy crap, man. It was something he did with, I forgot, the guy that was in Zappa, the guitar player, had his own solo record.
Di Meola?
Who?
Al Di Meola?
No.
Steve Vai?
Not Vi either. They,
Oh,
I think this
uh,
guy's brother plays drums. So, but this is what happens when you get to this age. I can't think of it. But anyway, he was on his solo record, so we were laughing, and it just.
that's
And every
funny.
time I see him, I'll dig out something just to go, man, you're on this. It was a pop record. And I said, I always loved this song. And finally, when I look deep, you look deeper into it. It's like with Picaro. How many times you hear a tune, you go, all my life I love this.
Right,
Let me look at who's on the record. And you see either his name comes up, usually again will come. And
right,
you just go, man, no wonder. Like, you just heard this record from the 70s that had a great groove. And
right,
you never look deeper, you know.
right,
Um, but it's like, so again, you want to be able to go from something where you're playing the hourest thing. That's why I love still doing my jazz gigs. I get to be a different person.
right.
I still play with the, 9-piece band Uppercut where we get to play, I get to bash a little and play,
Sure.
Tower of Power, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, who
Yeah.
I love, and Danny
Must-
Seraphine was one of my idols. So I get to do that. I still do this original thing with Jazzophonic where Billy Heller charts and Bob Gallo charts we play.
Right,
So I get to do me because it's original stuff.
right.
And last night I played a jazz gig. I do every Monday, nice and light. And this weekend I'm going to be all over the place. It's Thursday. I play with a 5-piece band that we do some Elton Johns, a little Sting. So I get to be a
Wow.
different person there. And
That's cool.
after the week, I'm really thankful of. If I had to do one thing, I go insane.
I think drummers who have that mentality. I mean, if you look at my CD collection, it looks like 10 different people's CD
Right.
collections. And I think it serves us well that we get bored easily because then you're going to want to find yourself in a different head,
Amen. Right.
I mean, some of these guys were just, and I find it more in jazz than in anything else, the purists,
Yeah.
where it has to be this, it has to be.
You're right.
They're forgetting what jazz was.
Yeah.
Jazz was the outlaw back in the day,
Great point. A great point. And even with certain things that are happening now, and you know what? I'm at fault too, because certain things I just kind of turned off to, and then maybe a student comes in or hits me with something, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't give this a chance or whatever. And I always think of this. Jim Chapin, again, who was one of my dear friends, and
Right. Mm-hmm.
sweetest guy in the world. He's the one I still thank that at 56 years old, I haven't had any injuries, knock on
Right.
wood here. But, he would always, no matter what, go see drummers, especially at the NAMM show when everything was going
Right.
on. You had the best jazz from the hardest rock players to, and even if it was some drummer that was just bash, he found something good
Positive to say about
in
it.
everything. And you know what? I try to always now keep that with me, whether it is music or someone, or maybe certain things are not our taste. Even certain plays you see, you go, all right, I don't get it, but
Right.
does that mean there's
No
there's
merit
something
in it,
not
yeah.
really right?
Right.
Exactly. So you try to look beyond and see that and go, all right, what can we get? What do you get out of it? Sometimes you go to see a band or whatever, and you get something out of it. It may not be good, but it makes you, it hits you on something as far
Right.
as okay,
Absolutely.
you learn something,
Definitely. Who would you say as players? I mean, we touched on a few already. Who do you think would be your biggest influence as a player?
Again, in my time, because my father always had the big band records going, were all the big band plays, like, of course, Gene Krupa. That was the thing. Then when, seeing Buddy Rich, Sonny Payne always freaked me out. Watching him and just, that's why when you see guys like twirling out and stuff, these dudes were doing that then. Sonny Payne
Right.
behind his back and the Count Basie bit, all those drummers that came through that, that scene were, I guess in the beginning, my biggest influence as far as the style and the big band stuff. That's what brought me to Chicago.
Right.
And when I heard Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears, because now they took the big band and put a little rock and funk on it.
Spinning Wheel was the very first song I learned to play the whole thing on a drum kit.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and what an arrangement. And
Yeah.
so seeing Seraphine and hearing that band with horns where there's kicks going on, but you're hearing Terry Kath, who was a monster, you know, I mean, playing these solos and just, so that really got me going. So, you know, then it was like the Seraphine and
Right,
Columbi.
right.
And then I guess Garibaldi, of course Ringo, you know, because you saw that. So there was always something that I'm thankful that I did come from, more from that, you know, the big band side of it and those drummers. And
Right.
then, of course, was, you know, Tony Williams. To see that guy was just, you know, that was someone I think that freaked everybody out, watching him and just what he took. So it was more the
Really
simple,
intelligent player.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and just at the age he was, it just, there's certain things where, man, that's not right for that age. How do you do? But, and it was, you know, those drummers, and then of course when Gadd came on the scene, like listening to that stuff, it was like, how is it? Because he brought it to another level then, you know. Whether I guess the '70s with him, where you just heard, how is this? Who's playing this? You know, but also the records from the '50s and '60s, because those drummers were jazz big band drummers.
Right.
You know, they came from that when they were playing more of that rock groove, it would always swung. And that's
Right.
what you try to tell which Bonham did and Mitch Mitchell did.
Right.
They had swing in
Right.
their rock. So now sometimes that's the thing I think that's lacking for me, is everything is 16 note, 32nd note kind of based with the newer, you know, and there's not that swing in some of these players. It's awesome what they do and the technique, but it's, you know, where that doesn't have that little swing to it, you know.
Some of it's become more of an athletic event than it
Well,
has
that's-
become music.
Yeah.
You know, which, look, everything has its place. I can certainly appreciate, well, in any of those speed metal bands, I always appreciate the
It's
drummer.
insane what they're-
It's tremendous,
it's scary,
you know.
but the speed what they play with their hands and feet is insane.
But in my, and I'm not a classically trained guitarist or anything, so I wouldn't even know how good their guitarists are. But I would imagine the drummer's the standout in those bands.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I mean it's true. I mean, again, and you know, you may not like it, you may not, you know, I mean, I always say after a while, like students will play me some of that stuff, and my heart starts pounding. I'm like, look, I'm too old for that.
Hey, I can listen to Hate Eternal, but I can only listen to 2 songs at a time because then I'm at my destination and I got there way early.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, I know. I'm like grabbing, I'm downstairs when they're playing this stuff for me. I'm like shaking, but it's so you know, and everybody now, you know, it's everybody. I guess we get some kind of, you know, influence from. And then when the drum machines came on the scene, you know, when you had, at least when drummers were programming, you're like, man, that's pretty cool
Right.
groove, you know. And then you realize the drummer came up with it, you know, and stuff was where you, and then there was other drum machine thing where you go, it's physically impossible.
That's
You
right.
know, how am I
Right.
recreating this? So now, you know, now you'd be doing a cover tune that has this thing going on, and it'd be, oh, we do it like the record. Oh, really? Well,
Right,
I
yeah.
better get a machine because I can't play that. It's like, so you would try, which was a cool thing. I guess, there we go, that I remember trying to create parts, but making your own, you know, and making it organic maybe, even though it was done with a drum machine.
Right.
I remember playing with bands and going, look, I'm going to do my own thing to it. So a
Right.
lot of that, the drum machine stuff did influence that.
Yeah.
You know, to come up with
Oh,
your own
absolutely. Some of the beats that have become sort of the mainstay of some of this dubstep and these other
thing.
things,
Right.
we have to replicate that. So now we've had to figure that out.
Yeah.
So another evolution.
Very true.
It's the funny thing about drums. People will argue, no, guitar is the oldest instrument. All right, I'm sure that there was a hollow log in some other guy's head way earlier than there was. Some guy says, hey, you know what? If we take these cat guts and we dry them out and string them really tight, something's going to happen. You know? So we're the oldest instrument in the world, but the drum set itself is one of the younger ones. Maybe 100, 110 years old, maybe?
Think about, we always,
You know?
the hi-hat. When I tell students, I go, the hi-hat didn't even exist.
Right, which is why it's on the one side and why we play crossed over, because that foot's sort of busy. If we had had the time, you know, and there had been like cable run bike brakes at that time. You might have one of these
that
way
funny?
before you had
Yeah.
one of these, you know? But we had the technology we had at the time, and man,
That's
I tell
cool.
you,
That's a cable, that.
yeah, it's pretty neat, you know?
Who makes that?
Pearl made this one.
That's cool.
It's funny when I look at this thing. Every time I see that thing, I think of that clinic that I saw with you three guys, those many years ago, because I felt sort of bad for Joe Franco. I teach in one of his books all the time. I teach in his double bass drumming book, and he spent, I don't know, it felt like 20 minutes to do that first solo, and then he gets out and, he grabs the mic, and, he did get clapping and everything, but one of the first things that they ask is, what's that thing on your hi-hat? Because Drum Workshop had just made the drop clutch.
Oh, that's
I'm
yeah.
sure Dennis at the Drum Center must have sold like 20 of those things the next
That's
day.
what happens, right?
But that was the very
Yeah.
first question.
Well, some of the questions
And
at the
then
clinics.
Morgenstein, he had questions about Rush more than anything else, so he
Yeah.
had to regale us with Neil Peart stories about the French tutor and the biking from
That's
city
right.
to city and that sort of thing, and
I remember going to Bozio with the other Sonny Emery, who's insane too. And the first question with Bozio, after he does, his shows his genius and what he was, what he created. How is it being married to Dale Bozio? Something like that.
right, yeah. I remember that was actually he said something about that, Terry Bozzio, in 83 or 84 in Modern Drummer magazine. He just
Yeah.
could not shake that thing, and well, we all know how that
Yeah,
turned
there
out.
you go. Well,
So things happen.
yeah.
But let me see what time it is here.
Oh yeah.
It's just about 5
Perfect
o'clock.
time.
Terrific. Well, this was a great conversation. I'd like to invite you again at a future date.
Definitely do it again.
I'm sure you're a wealth of knowledge.
Anytime.
Terrific. All right. Well, this is the first one. I want to thank you all for tuning in. And this has been Frank Bellucci. And
Two
this
L's,
is...
2 C's.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. All right. Tune in till next time. Thanks.
Thank you. 2 L's, 2 C's.